Of something that happened years ago at Hope House, and it involved the nativity scene. And Hope House have got a really good nativity scene. Yeah, that's better. I feel a lot easier now, because I like to move about a bit, and I just knew what was going to happen. And anyway, Hope House had this. I think they've still got it. This really good nativity scene. Quite big characters, quite expensive, I should imagine, in its day. And they'd laid it out on the table with some straw, and but they put it at the front. So part of the service, they had to move it. Well, two guys got hold of this table, and they started moving the nativity scene. Well, as you can imagine, they weren't secured down, so things started to wobble a little bit. And anyway, one of the shepherds copped it big time and fell off the table and fell on the floor. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, in falling on the floor, the shepherd lost his leg. It completely shattered. And, well, in that moment, I just completely lost it. It was just like, oh, dear. Me and my brother were just like in fits of laughter. We just could not stop. He just held up this shepherd with one leg. And it was like, oh, my goodness, come on. I had visions of them gluing the leg back the wrong way round. Anyway, so just a little aside. I didn't want anything to happen to our wonderful nativity scene. What? Jesus is God? Right, okay. Well, actually, Mary giving birth leads me to another little aside, in that we sing Silent Night, Holy Night. Now, it's a lovely hymn, don't get me wrong, a lovely carol. But was it really silent? Are we really saying that Mary, in giving birth, somehow miraculously gave birth so silently that she just laid down, popped Jesus out, hello, welcome to our world? Are we really saying that? I don't think so. From what I haven't been present at a birth, but from what I can imagine, there would have been a lot of screaming, a lot of shouting, a lot of blood, a lot of mess, all sorts going on at birth. And yet we sing Silent Night, Holy Night. Sometimes the carols can be unhelpful, but sometimes they really can be helpful. Hark the herald angels sing, declares Christ the Saviour is born. And just as a little aside this morning, I want to share with you and say to you that Christ the Saviour is born. That's our declaration. This is good news. And in fact, I want to say to you that the Christmas story, and we call it Christmas story, almost, again, that is almost an unhelpful statement. Because in our minds, we think of stories that we've heard, stories that have been told to us, a once upon a time. But let me just say that the Christmas story that we know so well is not a once upon a time story. It is not a fable, a legend, a good story with good morals that we can learn from. It is good news. In fact, I think we've got this. In Luke 2:10, the angels declare to the shepherds, it's one of the, thanks, Justine. The angel declares to the shepherds, what? I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. It suddenly dawned on me, it was almost like a little light bulb moment this year as I've been reflecting on the Christmas story, that the angels came to bring good news. When we watch the news, it's events that have happened. And it suddenly clicked this year as I thought about that phrase, good news. We hear it, the angels say it, glad tidings, good news. I want to declare today from the very beginning that what we know so well as the Christmas story, the narrative accounts in the Gospels, the two Gospels, it is news. These are events that happened. And the angels declared the good news because they came to tell the shepherds of events that have happened in Bethlehem. Not just once upon a time, but events that have happened and are real. So, I've been reading a book by Tim Keller about Hidden Christmas, and he expands on that so much better. But I just want to say from the off, we're not talking about a once upon a time nice story that we tell our children. These are events in time that actually happened. One of the other big problems with the Christmas accounts, the Christmas story, is that it involves the supernatural. And even in the church setting, there is a big problem with the supernatural. Let me just go through some of the things that the Christmas account talks about. Angels. A virgin giving birth. God coming down to earth. There are many people in the church setting that do not believe that could happen, could ever happen, that God would come down to earth. They do not believe that that could happen, that a creator God would somehow, in his plans, would come down to earth. Why would he? Was that his plan? Surely if he's creator God, he could come up with something bigger, better, that would solve the problem. But a virgin giving birth, let me just say, and Tim Keller mentions this, that Mary could have been as young as 15. 15. As soon as I said just that to Justine, she said, oh, you're not going to believe it, but Sophie's 15 today. Now, let me put it another way, and this isn't to embarrass you. What if Sophie was to come to Justine and Keith and say, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. Right. Okay. What if she was then to say, and this baby, it's a bit different. It's God's baby. What? I should think even Keith and Justine would be like, you are mad. You are crazy. What is going on with you? And yet that's the Christmas story. Mary could have been as young as 15. If one of the youth went up to you, Sarah, and in the youth group said, I'm pregnant, you'd be like, yeah, come in this room, we need to have a chat. This is the Christmas story. This is the reality of what could have happened. These are real people. And yet we read it and just want to say, we're dealing with things that are supernatural. And you might not totally grasp all the things of the Christmas account. But in Luke 1:37, it declares, I'm not sure it's the angel, or I think it's the angel that declares it. Nothing you see is impossible with God. As we look at this whole story, as we reflect on it over these weeks, as you look at it yourself, just remember that in all this, nothing is impossible with God. We're dealing with a real story, not a once upon a time. We're dealing with supernatural stuff that seems a bit weird, wacky, and crazy, but with God, nothing is impossible. And so the reality is, if God's plan really was to come down to a virgin who was only 15, and that virgin was to conceive a child that would be so different, then nothing is impossible with God. And this is good news. This is the news. It isn't a moral story that helps us learn about ourselves and how we can live our lives. This is good news. Now, my starting point for where I'm going today is 1 Corinthians 13:7. It declares, love always protects. We've read that over the last few weeks as we've studied 1 Corinthians 13. In Luke 2 verse 7, it says, Luke 2 verse 7, she gave birth to her firstborn son. She, Mary, wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger. I've read that line a few weeks ago in Max Lucado's book. She wrapped him in cloths, placed him in a manger. Just think for a minute. Mary, at that point, as she gave birth, with all that mess and noise going on, she could have rejected that baby. And she had every right to. It wasn't hers. This baby was different. But the gospel writers declare, Mary wrapped him in cloths, placed him in a manger. You know what that, as I've been reflecting on that over these last few weeks, I've come to realize the power of that statement that we can just read and overlook. In that moment, after she had given birth, Mary makes a decision that says, I've been through a lot already, and we're going to have a look at some of those things. I've been through a lot over the last 9 months, but at the point of birth, she makes a decision that says, I love this baby. I'm going to care for this baby. I'm going to wrap it in cloths, and I'm going to put it carefully in that manger. She wrapped him in cloths, placed him in a manger. What if you were given the privilege of Mary? What if God himself were placed in your arms as a naked baby? Would you not do what she did? Let's remember, and we can have this clean and medically, clinically clean scene in our minds with the nativity scene. But the baby Jesus, still wet from the womb, was cold. He was dirty, messy. So Mary did what any mother would do. She did what love does. She covered him. She wrapped him. She clothed him. She dressed him. There is such power in that one little verse if we read it and meditate on it. That's what Mary did. And wouldn't you cherish the opportunity to do the same? So my thinking was, as I picture this scene of Mary, Joseph, and the baby in the manger, how did she get to Bethlehem? What brought her to Bethlehem? And so quickly, I want to just have a look very briefly at part of Mary's journey. Told you this would happen. It's just happening. Luke 1, verse 38. There is a statement here that Mary makes. We perhaps know the conversation that Mary has with the angel as the angel makes this declaration of what's going to happen. But Mary declares in verse 38, I am the Lord's servant. May your word to me be fulfilled. Then the angel left her. I am the Lord's servant. It's a statement of obedience with a lot to teach us. You see, as she says that to the angel, as she hears this news that she is going to give birth to a son, this isn't Mary saying through gritted teeth, Lord, looks like I don't have a choice. I've got no part to play in this. I've got no choice in this at all. That's not what that statement is saying. When she says, I am the Lord's servant, she knows God, her creator, and she knows that he deserves her service. Mary surrendered her will to God. And think for a minute of all she was being asked to do. She was going to have a child, and even if Joseph stayed, people were going to start talking. They were going to start very quickly to work out that engaged at that date, giving birth at that date, hold on a minute. What they're going to start to say. That whole small community are going to think she'd either had sex with Joseph before they were married, or she had been unfaithful to her fiancé. That's what they're going to start to think and to talk. She knew what she was getting into. It's almost as if she's saying, whatever comes, I accept it. I am the Lord's servant. There's such power in that statement as well. It can teach us so much. And what happens is, as we read the account, is that Mary heads off to visit Elizabeth, who's also pregnant. Now, this is a little interesting aside. Okay, in verse 36, a couple of verses back, the angel declares, even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child. And she's already in her 6th month of pregnancy. Okay? Mary goes off to visit Elizabeth, and a few verses later, in verse 56, the Bible says Mary stayed with Elizabeth for 3 months. Now, if my maths is right, 6 add 3 equals 9. Am I right? Are you thinking what I'm thinking? There is every chance that Mary stayed until Elizabeth gave birth to John. There's every chance that she stayed, purely because in those days, you needed family around you to help you get through that process. So part of me thinks that Mary went to Elizabeth for a number of reasons, but she stayed so that she could be part of that birth with her relative to help her. But Elizabeth says something when Mary arrives in verse 45, which I've never really taken any notice of until I've done this preparation. Elizabeth declares, "Blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her." She makes a statement, Elizabeth, to Mary that declares, in a sense, you have believed that the Lord will fulfill his promises. So Mary enters the building, and it's almost as if God just wants to confirm to Mary, what you're going through is very real. The angel wasn't an hallucination. This supernatural stuff you're experiencing, it might seem weird, but this is what I'm saying to you. The promises that I've given to you will be fulfilled, and they are being fulfilled. And to me, it's almost as if Mary, in entering the room and entering that building, it just seals it for her. She suddenly realizes how real this is, and that God, his promises are going to be fulfilled through that baby in her. So Mary suddenly bursts into song, verses 46 to 55. I'm not going to sing, you'll be pleased to know. But in this song, and again, this is something I've not really noticed before, but in verse 55, right towards the end of the song that Mary sings, she declares, "To Abraham and his descendants forever, just as he promised our ancestors." Now, you might just miss the link there. You might not understand it a great deal. But as I've had a look at it this year, it suddenly makes a lot of sense. Because if you consider God's promise to Abraham and what it cost him, let's just think for 1 minute. Basically, God said to Abraham, "I want to bring salvation into the world through you and your family." Abraham replies to God, "What do you want me to do?" God replies, "This is what I want you to do. I want you to leave your home, your family, your friends, your security, everything." "Oh," says Abraham, "where do you want me to go?" God says, "I'll tell you later. You just go." That's what happened with Abraham. In Hebrews 11, verse 8, the Message version says, this is a great verse. Hebrews 11, verse 8. By an act of faith, Abraham says yes to God's call. And it says, when he left, he had no idea where he was going. When he left, Abraham had no idea where he was going. That sounds a bit scary to me. But I just want to challenge you that if you want to be part of God's plan, or God wants you to be part of his plan, he's going to send you on a journey. And for some of you, you're not going to know where you're going. And for some of you, like Mary and Joseph, you might have an idea. History shows us that, of course, the Romans had this census, and so they were forced to go to Bethlehem. Mary didn't have to go, but she did, for a number of reasons. And I just want to challenge you and perhaps scare you a little by saying that sometimes on the journey that God takes us on, we're not going to know where we're going. And that takes a lot of faith. But the Bible gives us these characters in Mary and Abraham to encourage us in such a way, to show us that actually when we're part of God's plan, he's got it all under control. And somehow we need to trust him to take the steps, even when we don't know where we're going. So God's going to take you on a journey if you really want to be part of his plan. I just want to pick up on something that Mandy had mentioned as well about being a social club. here. Tim Keller says, becoming a Christian is not like signing up for a gym. It's not a living well program that will help you flourish and realize your potential. You're not here today to realize your potential, to leave this place feeling good about yourself. We're not here as a social club or like a gym membership. He goes on to say, and this really kicks hard actually, Christian faith is not a negotiation, but a surrender. It means to take your hands off your life. That really excited me when I read that, because we have been planning and we'd got this word, surrender. And Mandy, I just really feel that 2024 is going to be an exciting journey for this church if we're willing to surrender. But here's the kick in the gut, because it means having to take your hands off your life. And that is pretty scary. I'm not here to say it's going to be easy. I'm not here to say it's going to life is going to give you lots of really good, happy things all the time. I'm not here to preach that. But I am here to declare that God is on that journey with us every step of the way. And sometimes I think we can use church as a negotiation. I'll come to church if. I'll do that, God, if. I'll get involved with that scheme if. But that is not the attitude that Mary had, that says, I am the Lord's servant. Because that statement declares he is God in control, and we are merely servants to do what he wants us to do. So if we are willing, church, to surrender, to take our hands off our lives, I think we're going to go on a really exciting journey together. And it's going to be scary, it's going to be difficult, we're going to need each other, we're going to need prayer, we're going to need everything we can hold on to sometimes. I think of Martin and Nicola and the journey that they're going on in this coming year. I don't know what's going to happen, guys, but I do want to declare that God is with you every step of the way. And you might be scared witless in all that might lay ahead. But if you are willing, like Mary and Abraham, to take your hands off somehow in all that's going on, God is going to fulfill his plans and promises to you and to all of us. But I've got to say, I've been really challenged as I've read this book, because I've come to realize there's areas in my life that I've taken back. And I'm not here as a preacher to say that I'm perfect, but I'm here to say that as I read God's word and I'm challenged and sharpened and inspired by the characters in it, like Mary, God will highlight things in our lives that he would just say, what about that? Why don't you take your hands off that again and let me take control? And I've got to say, there are some things that I know God's highlighted, and I'm going to work on it. Because here's the thing with Mary, it was a journey of faith. She questioned the angel. She struggled. She had lots of questions in her mind. It was a journey of faith. And sometimes we preach that if we come to the altar today, everything's going to be all right, and tomorrow is going to be great. Actually, the reality is, tomorrow might be worse than today, but God's still with us on the journey. 6 months' time, we might be hitting new depths of despair, but God is still with us on the journey. Mary had no idea, except she was going to go to Bethlehem with Joseph. She had no idea what was going to happen to this baby. But she went. Tim Keller says, our greatest motive for surrendering to him cannot be for what he will do in us. It must be to love him for what he did for us. Our greatest motive for surrendering to him cannot be for what he will do in us. It must be to love him for what he did for us. Now, just think for 1 minute. Mary, in surrendering and saying, I am the Lord's servant, she didn't know about the cross. She didn't take communion every week. She didn't know any of that. She'd got this baby inside of her growing that was going to go to the cross. But we know that. And she had so many bits of information that we know with history and hindsight that she did not. And yet she was able to surrender. And she was able to love her God for what he had done for her. And my question when I first started is, what led Mary to Jerusalem? I initially thought it must have been her love for the Lord. Her love for the Lord led her, made her go with Joseph and led her to Bethlehem. But as I've looked at this over the last few days, I've come to realize that love isn't enough for that answer. Shall I tell you what I think led Mary to Bethlehem? Yeah, I'd written Jerusalem. I don't know why I've done that. Bethlehem. What led her to Bethlehem? It was surrender. From the moment the angel Gabriel came to her with that message about what was going to happen, and she declared, I am the Lord's servant, may it be to me as you have said. It was that total surrender that said, whatever happens now, you're in control. Wherever you take me, I'm going to go. Whatever you want me to do, I'll do. It was total surrender. And that's what led Mary. It wasn't her great faith. It wasn't her great love for the Lord. I think it was simply this, that she surrendered everything. And she allowed God to move and take her on that journey. And so just as I started, we head back to that baby in the manger. She wrapped him in cloths, placed him in a manger. What if you were given the privilege of Mary? What if God himself were placed in your arms as a naked baby? Would you not do what she did? The baby Jesus, still wet from the womb, was cold. So Mary did what any mother would do. She did what love does. She covered him. Wouldn't you cherish the opportunity to do the same? I'm here to say, as we finish, you have one. You've got an opportunity every day to do what Mary did. You're thinking, hold on, but I'm not involved in any big plan. I'm not involved in any big ministry in the church. Me? How can I do what Mary did in the same way? Matthew 25. Jesus uses this story and says, I was shivering, you gave me clothes. I was sick, and you stopped to visit. I was in prison, and you came to me. And the people that were listening to the story said, well, hold on a minute, hold on. When did we ever see you hungry and feed you, thirsty and give you a drink? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and come to you? Have we got the next verse? Yep. The king will say, I'm telling the solemn truth, whenever you did one of these things to someone overlooked or ignored, that was me. You did it to me. I want to finish today by saying this Christmas time, if you want to be part of God's plan, if you want to show that love, if you want to be like Mary with Jesus and clothe him and wrap him and just show that love, I'm here today to say you can. Because there are people that you know that are sick, that with just one visit or one phone call to say, hi, how you doing? Anything I can do? You're thinking, but that doesn't sound a particularly big plan. What difference is that going to make? Jesus is effectively saying, when you do it to them, you're doing it to me. And so my challenge to you this Christmas time is to look out for those opportunities. To go and visit someone in prison. To go and visit someone in hospital that you know. To give some clothes from your wardrobe to the person that's got no clothes at all. By doing that, you will be doing exactly what Mary did. Not just showing love, but showing Jesus that love. And so I challenge you today. Love always protects. It always protects. That's really all I wanted to say. Just how my mind wandered. And I would say to any preacher Monday, don't read a book just before you've got your preach, because it just changes everything. But Hidden Christmas by Tim Keller just looks into a number of those themes. I haven't read it all yet, but it's a great little book. But there are some real challenges of the Christmas story account that I think can really take us in to the new year.
Amen. Amen.